Commissioner Marath, I watched your YouTube presentation and saw the press release. And the bottom line is the TEA has reassessed some things and updated guidance for districts across the state. Can you kind of nutshell what's going on?
Yes, sir, absolutely. I mean, we obviously have a very dynamic public health situation in Texas, and our first priority is keeping people safe, keeping students and teachers and staff safe. And so we want to ensure that parents have access to an on-campus instructional environment if they should so choose, but also that parents can keep their children home and be supported with remote instruction if they should so choose. However, in places where there may be high levels of community spread, which is not everywhere, it's a very big and geographically diverse state, and what is needed in a place like a Harris County is different than what's needed in a place like a Pecos County. But if local public health conditions warrant it, school systems have the flexibility to delay the start of their school year, as they do in any year, but also they have the ability to start school slowly, to limit access. So you can imagine maybe what we want to do in our first week of school is only have, say, 50 or 80 kids in a building that otherwise serves 800. So that we can work through our procedures, make sure everything is as safe and as effective as possible. Or in the event that local conditions are significantly challenging, perhaps starting all virtual. So the guidance that we've provided today allows school systems to have that flexibility to serve their students effectively, while also making sure that everyone remains safe during this time period, students and staff especially.
When some people read a headline, they may think, well, every school district's going to do remote for 4 weeks. That's not the case, right? Rural counties, in fact, the state have virtually or very low COVID cases.
Yeah, our indications and conversations that we have had with school systems around the state lead us to believe that the vast majority of school systems in the state of Texas will start with some amount of on-campus instruction on their normal schedule. Some school systems are delaying that, and then we're also starting to see some local public health orders that are of relevance. And of course, if you're under a binding order from some other entity, then you have to follow those orders as well.
There's been a lot of outcry from larger urban districts where COVID cases have been out of control recently, so to speak, Harris County or HISD being one of them. Did the pressure from these districts, and I know you've gotten letters from urban school district board presidents as well, did that factor into your decision, or is it just the changing dynamic since the initial guidelines were released?
Yeah, I mean, so I have very regular conversation with educators all over the state of Texas, whether we're talking teachers or principals or superintendents or school board members. We have throughout this crisis tried to keep all lines of communication open so that we can be as responsive as possible. It actually started back in mid-March when schools began closing, and we had 7-day-a-week conference calls with superintendents from all over the state. What we've, it's really just a function of being responsive to the changing public health conditions. Because if like 4 weeks ago, the level of community spread in Harris County was much lower. And so as facts on the ground change, we try to follow the most current science and craft recommendations that allow for local flexibility to respond to those health conditions.
One of the larger teachers unions said today, we appreciate the districts getting more leeway because teachers in particular have shown some concern about going back into the classroom, given their age ranges and other factors. They're still calling for the governor to close all schools until the pandemic is under control, whatever the threshold may be. What do you say to the union?
Well, our priority remains making sure people remain safe. There's 5.5 million children that are served in Texas public schools, but there's also 700,000 adults that work in our school system. And we've got to make sure that we create an environment that is safe for everyone. That is critical. But two, I think that the science on the virus doesn't, and what we see in terms of the level of spread in the state doesn't necessarily justify a single state response like that. There are still counties in Texas that have 0, 1, 2, 3 active cases in the entire county. And so, a closure order to in-person instruction there only harms students without an actual public health benefit. I mean, we have to remember that the on-campus learning environment is really valuable for our kids. I'm a parent with, four kids. 2 of my kids are school-aged, and they benefit greatly from being in a Texas public school. So you want to make sure that we're reacting based upon what the health conditions say and not overreacting, because a lot of our kids, school is not just a source of academic growth, but we have students who are homeless and students who don't have ready access to food, and that is provided to them in our school system. So there's a lot of other negative health consequences that can come if schools are closed. So we don't want to close the schools unless it's absolutely necessary.
Let me know if I'm reaching my time limit, by the way, but Fort Bend ISD, what's that again?
Give it 2 minutes.
Okay. Fort Bend ISD, one of the larger districts around here, they decided to do online learning indefinitely, is what they say. And the superintendent tells me, well, if we need to appeal it to the TEA at some point, we've done that in the past, we may do it again. There is a funding function that goes along with following these guidelines, right?
Yeah, the framework that we've laid out says that on-campus instruction needs to be available to those families that want to have access to on-campus instruction for their children. There's a time period, and the time period has been meant to coincide with the degree of community spread that we have, so that we have enough time to flatten the curve as we have done before in Texas. And so the time period provides a 4-week window when districts can have virtual instruction, and if for some reason local conditions warrant it, the school board can vote to extend that by up to 4 weeks. But we would really encourage districts to allow on-campus instruction to happen, even for very small numbers. If you think about a school that's designed for 800 students, allowing 80 kids on campus, especially if we're talking about young children, that where the virus seems to behave very differently for adults than it does for children, it can be done in a way that really does prioritize safety while also ensuring the kids, especially kids who are most at risk, have access to the on-campus instructional experience.
And do you anticipate?
Okay, so we're at time.
One
Sorry,
more
man.
question?
Yeah, we can do one more.
Sure,
Real
sure,
quick.
fire away.
I was just going to say, do you anticipate reassessing all of this again in a few weeks, I mean, as this changes?
Yeah, I mean, as I think everyone has noticed, we've made changes throughout this crisis because as coronavirus continues to affect the state, as the science and scientific understanding of the virus continues to change, as medical therapies continue to change, it obviously necessitates a flexible response, and we will continue to remain flexible throughout.
Commissioner Morath, I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, take care.